Thank you very much. I look forward to the opportunity of sharing my screen with you. So I'm going to open up this right now and let me know, does this show on your screen? Do you see heroic leadership? Is that showing okay?
We do. That's perfect.
Okay, excellent. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to tell you, and should be a great hope for everyone that's listening, both live now and the recording that's going to be saved later on IRHA's YouTube channel. Leadership, it's not what you think it is entirely. I was partly wrong about what leadership is. And once I discovered that, I had to put it into a presentation so that I could encourage others. John Maxwell's got some of the best stuff out there on leadership. And he says that leadership is influence, pure and simple. Well, I think there's a little bit more of a nuance to it. And once I discovered what that was in the dictionary of all places, then I realized I've got to put something together where I can encourage, especially healthcare professionals. And who is a leader? How do you engage? How do you empower, no matter what your title or your role is? So let's dive into this. Before we start, though, I like to do a little bit of fun. So at the end, I'm going to reveal the answer. But one of these 5 options is not true about me. 4 of them are. So the half Canadian, never broken a bone, Baptist preacher, visited the crossroads in Baghdad, Iraq, or 39 years old. One of those is not true. 4 of them are correct. You can guess which one, and the answer will be revealed at the end. Also, we're going to do a signed copy of 2 books. My book, Wow Your Customer, 7 Ways to World-Class Service. I'll send a signed copy, and I'll include Brian Lee's book, Rural Hospital Renaissance. We're official partners with Custom Learning Systems, great group, but we want to include these. So here's the catch. The person born farthest away from IRHA's headquarters in Indiana, farthest away, is the one that's going to receive this. I'll mail it out. We'll find out who was. Just type, if you think you were born farthest away from IRHA's home base, just type that in the chat and we'll keep track of who that could be. I'll be happy to send these 2 books as a thank you for spending your time and investing it with us today. All right, that's not my version, but that's the version I had for years, a hardback Webster's Dictionary. I went to that because I wanted to find out, well, what is leadership? I had always gone with the understanding from people who are well respected that leadership was influence, but I discovered something remarkable. Leadership is the capacity to lead. So it doesn't matter what your title is, what your role is, how long you've been somewhere. The fact is that we all have leadership. The question is, are we nurturing that so that we have more capacity to lead? Leadership being influence, we are always influencing people around us, no matter what our title is. Been there for 2 months, been there for 20 years. You are influencing people around you. Well, if you understand that leadership is the capacity to be able to lead others, then when we go through this presentation, I'm going to give you all kinds of ways that you can intentionally invest into yourself and others so that you can be the kind of leader that makes a difference in the people around you. So remember, leadership is the capacity to lead, not actually what you do, and definitely not your role or your title. The actual definition is to guide on a way, especially by going in advance, meaning you've been there, done that, guiding others. I think that's a great word picture. So let's talk about that for a little bit. I believe there's 3 kinds of leaders, basically, if we're going to take this tour guide example, going on a journey. But there's actually one kind of leader that's absent, and that's the travel agent. Now, if you know somebody's a travel agent, this is nothing said negative about travel agents, but in regards to the trip itself, travel agents, they don't go with you. They set up the arrangements, they make sure everything's ready, they say, let us know how the trip was, and it's a postcard, but they don't actually go on the trip with you. I've read too many times, I have a degree in history, I'm a history buff, of too many leaders in battle that were absent in the rear. Of course, their unit didn't do well because they just weren't with them. So that's a leader that's absent from things. You certainly don't want to be a travel agent. But there are tour guides, but there's 2 kinds. Let's talk about the first kind. So I think we've all been on guided tours. Now, there are guided tours that are done by people that are there. Let's just put it bluntly. They're there for the check. They get paid. They're there because it's a job. So they do go through the tour. They mention the things, they point out the things you're supposed to see, and they tell you stories about it. But there's a third type of guide I want to tell you about, and that's the one who's engaged. This is the tour guide that loves what they do. They may have given that tour 15 times the last couple of days. They may have done it thousands of times in their career, but every time is like it's the first time they've given it. They're excited about it. They're engaged. They smile. There's enthusiasm in their eyes. They bring up new stories always. It's always fresh. You might do it every year, but somehow it seems like there's a little bit something different this year than there was last year. It's not a canned speech or presentation. That's the kind of tour guide we want to have in our minds. When you think of yourself as a leader, think of yourself as a tour guide that's going along with people and is giving all kinds of ideas and engagement and enthusiasm, and they love what they do. That's infectious. It makes the experience just that much better. Ajalon had a study that showed that the number one quality for leadership was leading by example. And this is where leadership comes in so important despite your role, because how we lead best, most effectively, is by our example, by what we do, not necessarily what we say. So keep that in mind as we go forward and start laying out some ideas and some tips on how we can do this. I think the very best way is what I call empathy. Now, empathy, Daniel Pink has the best definition on it. That's the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. As a matter of fact, this is the presentation that I'm sharing with the Kentucky Primary Care Association in Lexington, their spring conference next week. So I've had the opportunity to share this with them before. Now I get to share it again. I always give out a poll prior to my presentations, and I found out last fall when I gave it for the first time for KPCA, I discovered that more than half of the people attending, and there was over 50 people that attended the session, over half of them were naturally empathetic. Like me, they were born that way. It's just hardwired into you. You automatically can put yourself in someone else's shoes. But there are maybe some people that are like, you learned how to do it. And that's just as effective if you're good about communicating that to your team members and to your patients. There might be some that are unaware of what empathy is or how it's important. If you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially your team members, you will have an opportunity to have a positive influence in their life. But I know there's a subset of people that, as far as personality, temperament, life experiences, empathy just goes against the grain. It's not who they are, and that's okay. You can still practice the things of empathy. The most important way to express empathy, and I have a whole presentation on this, but to really put it into a nutshell, the very best way to show empathy is to ask great questions and listen to the answer and engage on the answer. So listen to understand, not listen to respond or engage. That's the very best way to display empathy to the people around you that you work with, or to the people that are patients that are coming in, or to vendors, nurses, physicians, whoever you interact with on a daily basis. Asking a question that's more than just how you doing, how's your day going, but really listening for and then engaging on that, you'll find that you'll start to have a positive influence and impact on people that don't work with you on a daily basis. And it's so much fun to see if their faces lighten up and see their eyes get, someone cares because they not only asked a question, but they wanted to hear the answer. Empathy is a great way to be an engaged leader, no matter what your role is. Oh, I love attitude. Okay, let me rephrase that. We have a few teenagers in our home. So let me be clear, when I'm talking about attitude, I'm not talking about the tude that sometimes we have to deal with that I had as a teenager too. I'm not talking about that kind of attitude. I'm talking about several specific aspects of attitude, because this is one thing that we can control that has direct impact on how we can influence others positively. So let's talk about attitude. First of all, a positive attitude. Now, I've been, it's a correct accusation, been accused of being an eternal optimist. Well, that's true. That's how I was hardwired. But positivity, a positive attitude, I would say the best way to look at this is anyone and everyone can find out and point out what's wrong, what's not working right, what the problem is. But a positive attitude, well, as you see a little bit further down that list, they're solution focused. So a positive attitude is like, we can do this. We can figure this out. We can get this done. That's a positive attitude. It's not rainbows and unicorns and life is great, because that next aspect of acknowledgement, if you're a leader who wants to connect with your people, the people around you, you've got to acknowledge the fact that sometimes things just stink. That's just the way they are. This is something I had to learn. And I'm so grateful to my wife to help bring in a healthy dose of realism in my life, because he said, John, you've got to address the elephant in the room is sometimes things are just hard. If anything is a testament to that, the last 2 years, I think, are a good example of how things are hard. And you've got to acknowledge that, but you can't dwell on that. That's where you start focusing on the solution. So a positive attitude says, we can get through this. This is difficult. This is hard, but we can get through this. And here's some ideas that I have. People that bring ideas to the table to help address the problems and the solution of the challenges that are easily seen by everyone. That's a leader. That's a leader. And it doesn't require you to have a title of a leader. Gratefulness. I heard a great presentation by David Horsiger. He's an expert on trust. And he said that gratefulness was the #1 attribute of people who earned and kept trust. Gratefulness. Are you a grateful person? Well, one little trick that I do every day when I'm going to work, I list 3 things. I talk out loud. I have a Bluetooth in while I'm driving, so hopefully people haven't noticed and think like, this guy's crazy. I out loud say 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I try to make them fresh from like the day before, a couple days before. I never try to recycle things I'm grateful for. And that helps put my mindset on a grateful trajectory as soon as I pull out of the driveway. Gratefulness, start your day with it, sprinkle it in throughout your day. Gratefulness is a fantastic way to be a positive leader. And the last one is perspective. Perspective, everybody has similar life experiences if you're working in the same environment, but perspective is taking the lessons, extracting the learning opportunities out of those experiences, and then applying those to your life. Knowledge is one thing. Wisdom is the ability to apply the knowledge we know. So perspective, a healthy, positive perspective, is a great way to be an impact, to be a change maker, to make a difference in the people around you. Because that perspective that you bring, especially if you've been there and for a while, and you have someone that might not have been there as long, perhaps they're newer to the team, they don't have the same perspective that you've got. Or what about somebody just joins your team now as things and the difficulties of COVID are starting to slow down, when at their peak, they were so difficult? Well, you have a perspective that's super helpful, because that level of stress compared to what we're experiencing now, or what we were probably experiencing pre-pandemic, is very different. Your attitude can be a huge way of how you engage your team. I love this quote. I am a Star Wars fan. I will readily admit that. I remember when I was 10 years old and I saw the very first Star Wars in my friend's basement, and that big Star Destroyer came over the screen. It was so cool. Well, Yoda has this saying that many people, or whoever wrote the script, really not Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. This is where the importance of what we do speaks the loudest. Remember on the very first slide, that age-long study showed that engaged leaders model, the ones that lead by example are the ones who are most effective. Again, don't think about titles. Don't think about role. Don't think about manager being on the business card or on the desk in front of you. Think about how you're impacting and influencing others. So here are some things that you need to be thinking about and do. The book that I have listed there is a good friend of mine. He's up in Canada, actually, Mark Hain. I'm delighted to meet this guy. Employee experience is his area of expertise, and we hit it off so well because that's an area of focus for me through the customer experience or the patient experience. And he said we should treat, he loves live theater. He's been doing it for years. He said businesses of all kinds, including healthcare facilities, should think of how they prepare in a day as if they were preparing for a live Broadway show. How much training? How much time do you put in to prepare for a live show? Quite a bit. There's a lot of thought and preparation that goes into that. So imagine if you treated your everyday as if it was a Broadway show unfolding live. There's a lot of aspects then that would go in to prepare for that day's events, that day's show. Actions, remember, those speak louder than words. And that saying, well, it's old, it's time, is really appropriate, especially as we understand how it's connected to leadership, engaged leadership. Character, oh gosh, I've heard so many great quotes on this, but one that I've seen often on social media is that difficult times reveal character. They don't create it. So these difficult times in particular, the healthcare world has gone through, I think it's shown to us some of the excellent people that we love to work with, people who were leaders by how they worked, how they worked through the difficult times, no matter what their title was, no matter what their role was. Integrity is a little bit different than character. Character is kind of the broad overview of who we are. Integrity is living up to what you say you're going to do. Integrity is one of those boxes. When I'm looking to connect with someone, those are one of the boxes that have to be checked. If I'm going to attach my reputation to someone and recommend them, they have got to have unquestionable integrity. Is that an attribute that would be true of you? If it is, you're already leading in one of the most important ways. Being trustworthy is extremely important. Are you a goal setter? I am, and I write them down. I've actually got them in front of me here by the desk. A University of Kansas study showed that our written goals are 30% more likely to be achieved than just goals we have in our head. Writing it down and then keeping it in front of us is really important. While making the goals is a good first step, well, a lot of people don't do that. What's even more important is achieving those goals, goal setting and goal getting. Do you have specific goals in your day? Or are we kind of going through the motions? When I started writing it down and putting it in front of me, it was a constant reminder. Now, I know some of you might be like, John, I don't sit at a desk all day. Well, that's true. Most days I'm not at the desk the whole time either. I do spend a lot of time at my desk, especially nowadays. There's a lot of things are done virtually, and that's very convenient. But I keep things in front of me in the car. I'm in the car every day. So I keep them in multiple places in front of me to remind me of these things that are really important, the goals I want to achieve. And by keeping them in front of us, even if we don't get to the ultimate goal we have in mind, because it's always in front of us, our subconscious mind is continually chewing and working on that so we can get farther towards that goal than if it wasn't in front of us at all. And lastly, Tim was one of the time I was in retail, was one of the best people I ever worked for, had a phenomenal customer and employee experience approach. I am so glad I got to work for him much earlier in my career. I learned a great deal from him. He walked the talk. It wasn't just a motto, wasn't just, oh, those are the values of the store. No, this was him to a T. And that's why I came to work in a retail environment for 5 years and got promoted multiple times, was because of his leadership, because of his investment into me. So if you do have a leadership title, a leadership role where you are in charge of others and you have the opportunity to give into their lives, think of yourself as that. Are you walking the talk? Are you bringing those posters that are on the wall to life for the people around you? And even if you don't have a title, that's commonly attributed to leadership. If you're living out the values that your organization says are a priority, you are walking the talk, which is better than talking the talk or not at all. Walking the talk is the most important way that you can have action that engages the people around you. Trust. I did speak on this earlier. Earning and keeping trust is so important, especially in the healthcare community. Well, so let's talk about a couple ways, 4 ways actually, that you can earn and keep trust. Prior to COVID, Zendesk had a global survey, 140,000 people in over 40, how many countries? 140 countries, 45,000 people, 140 countries. And they had a survey that showed that the number one reason why consumers would buy, it wasn't price and it wasn't brand recognition. It was know, like, and trust. It was relationships. Well, if COVID didn't serve as a magnifier like it's done for many things, where I believe we're coming out into an era where this is the primary driver for why people buy, why people come to a particular healthcare facility and come back and recommend it to others, is that know, like, and trust principle, that building a relationship. It works in the quote unquote business world, and it certainly works in healthcare. We found, because of the pandemic, we found how important people's health is to them, and rightly so. They really need to have a level of trust to be able to entrust it themselves, especially their loved ones' care, to your team. So knowing, liking, and trust. Knowing is they know about you. Like is, I like what I see. Trust is when they have engagement with you, do they come away saying, I trust that person? This happens internally as well. Do people on your team trust you? When you say you're going to do something, does it get done? And does it get done well? Then they can trust you. And you're deepening a relationship, because earning trust is the very best way to have a deep, solid, strong relationship. When I was new to B2B sales, I had never done it before in that field, and I had never done B2B sales before either. But I set the record my first full year in, not because I could sell you this pen. It wasn't because I could sell a dead horse and you'd be happy about it. I wasn't a born salesperson. What I did was I had the ability to earn trust quickly because I cared about them, because I asked questions about their world, because I wanted to know, of everything we had, was there anything we could help them with? I was connecting solutions we had with a problem they had, and I was connecting the two. But I was really good first about building relationship, asking great questions, actively listening, making sure that they knew that I cared about their world. And I think that was why I was able to set that record over people that had been in that industry and had been doing it for over 20 years. I think it was that, because I was able to earn and keep trust. When I was a summer camp counselor, they had about the first day of the week on Mondays, we'd go to the challenge course, a confidence course, a ropes course. We take the whole cabin there. So I was in charge of anywhere from 8 to 10-year-old boys. Woo. Gosh, I got a dose of what it's like to be a parent all of a sudden. I was drained by the end of the summer. It was a good experience. But we start off day one, and the very first element on the ropes course was the trust fall. So if you're not familiar with the trust fall, so you stand up on a tall stump, and the rancher would cross their arms in a certain way, and then they would fall back into the arms of the people standing behind them. So you'd have two lines of people facing each other with their arms out, and they'd fall back into the arms. My job as a counselor was to make sure that those kids, anyone, all of them, never, ever touched, let alone came close to hitting the ground. I would make sure that my arm was in there so that the biggest part of the kid would hit my arm, where I would make sure if I was the only one there, because we had some big 10-year-olds. And you imagine little 10-year-olds with this big 10-year-old tree coming back on them, the instinct to flee could kick in. And there's the counselor by himself. I made sure that not one kid ever touched the ground. Why? Because I had to earn their trust. I had to. If they touched the ground, how many of these kids have been dropped figuratively in their lives before? How many people have broken trust with them before? Think about that analogy. When you have people come to your clinic, to your healthcare, to your hospital, to your doctor's office, physician office, and it's the first experience they've had with you, there may have been instances before where they've gotten dropped. And so the reaction to you could feel awfully strong, somewhat negative, maybe very negative. If it's their first interaction with you, just realize that it's probably not you. It's probably a previous experience they've had. You need to be able to develop trust between your team members, with each other, and with patients. They need to know you'll catch them. And once you've earned that trust, then you'll see that you'll be able to have even more influence in their lives in a very positive way. And the last one is, there's a word in the business world called margin. Now, this often is connected with profitability. You build in margin so that the cost of the item, the product, or the service, there's margin built in so that you have profit to work with, so you can pay other expenses, grow your business. If you don't have profit, the doors don't stay open. Well, I consider this, under promising and over delivering, to be that aspect of building margin into your life. Build margin into your day so that when you promise someone something by a certain day and time, you know you can do it, because life does not go according to plan. The very best way to earn and keep trust is to say, you need that by tomorrow at 1, I can totally do that. In your mind, you're thinking, I'll have it to them by 10 a.m. Now, on the other hand, this is really important. 2 things. Number 1, if it's too tight, ask them, like, 1 o'clock's tight. Could I have it to you by the end of the day? They say yes, great. If they say no, then you've got to figure out, how do I make this happen, or tell them I can't do it by that time. It actually engenders more trust if you tell someone you can't than to tell them that you can and be just 5 minutes past a deadline. Better say you can't, or better say, can I have a little bit more time, because I know I could get it done well for you. Or let's say you've promised 1 o'clock and it looks like on track, and then the morning happens and you know 1 o'clock is not going to happen. Whatever you promised, it's just not going to happen. What you need to do well before 1 o'clock, is you need to reach out to that person. You say, I had wanted to get this to you by 1 o'clock. This came up. I'm not going to be able to do that. Can I have it to you by the end of the day? Will that still work for you? What I found in my experience when I was in sales is that most often they would say yes. It wasn't a hard deadline. It was a preference. When there were times where they said, I have to have it because I've got something coming up next, then I would involve others. I need help with this. This is a deadline they have to meet. How can we work together to get this done? You've got to meet that, and you've got to build in margin so that you can earn and keep trust. Margin, not just for the business world. Responsible. Are you a responsible person? Well, I hope you would be identified as that. The reason I put Honda Civic up there is I have one. This car is almost 300,000 miles and still going strong. Matter of fact, when it was younger, I had 2 company cars that were in the shop more than this car. Are you like that? I mean, I certainly am. My Honda is not a looker, but it gets me from point A to point B. It's reliable. Are you reliable like that? You're having way more influence and leadership in people's lives than you realize. If you're like my Honda Civic, that you crank that thing over, it runs well, gets 30 miles to the gallon, gets me from where I need to be to where I need to go. And it's shocking when it doesn't. That is leadership. And it's one of the most powerful ways to do it. But another aspect of it is ownership. When you're given something, do you take ownership of it? I don't mean control. Some people think when I say ownership, like I'm in charge, it's mine, I own it. What I mean by ownership is I'm going to treat it as if it was my hospital, my health clinic, my department, no matter what my role is. Because if I take ownership of it, then I want it to be very best as if it was my own business, as if it was my department. Taking ownership is a wonderful aspect of people where you see they take initiative, where they do what needs to get done, where it's important to them. You can tell doing a great job is important. People that take ownership are invaluable to have on your team. Are you professional in your engagement? That doesn't mean you should be inauthentic or canned or stiff, but professional means that you come across as someone that knows what they're talking about, that is confident in what they've learned and in the value they can add to others. Professionals are always learning. That's the next one. Professionals are always, as much as it relies on them, they're punctual. Notice it says punctual, not perfect. Life is too complicated with too many moving parts for us to expect us to always be on time every day for every year that we work somewhere. It's just not going to happen. Punctuality is that the pattern of your life is when there's a deadline or where I'm expected to be at work, I'm there. I'm even there a few minutes early. And the military drilled that into me. If you're not early, you're late, and you do not want to be 1 second late because you'll get all kinds of exercise you didn't plan for that day. If you end up being just a little bit late, best to be a little bit early. So that way you're actually on time when things kick off. And lastly is promotion. I don't mean promotion so that you can get ahead of others. What I mean is, are you looking for opportunities where you can get further ahead in what you're doing? Sometimes promotion isn't outside of where you are. Sometimes it's not even in the department you are. Sometimes it's just asking for opportunity to do more than what you were hired to do more than what's in your job description. It could also be that you are looking to be in a leadership position within your department, within your facility, elsewhere. However you do that, people that are looking for a promotion, looking for a next opportunity, looking to grow into something, are showing that they will do what it takes to be able to increase in responsibility. Ones who want to do that are already setting a pattern of being an engaged leader. Well, we're doing a great job. We're almost done with engagement. I'm about to go to empower, but there's one more slide I want to share with you, and that's the power of story. History is that. It's the story of humankind. Well, stories are very powerful in how they connect with others and how they engage. So let's look at some examples of stories and why they're so powerful. One story, if there is a way, and it's going to be included in the book I'm working on right now, a book, Winning at Life is the idea of the book, and it's coming out this year or next. I'm working on it now. If people could understand the power of their story, the reason why I say one story is, if you could get this, especially, this might be the biggest takeaway for you. No matter what you've been labeled in your life by school, yourself, well-meaning parents, peers, academically, in sports, in business, whatever you currently think of yourself, I want you to consider this. There has never been, there isn't right now, and there never will be another one of you, ever, ever. You are so unique. You could find somebody with the same name, born in the same town, even born on the same day for that matter, and they would still not be you. You are so incredibly unique. Time in history, where you were born, life experiences, temperament, personality, skills, and abilities. There's nobody else like you, which makes you remarkably special and remarkably important. If you could understand that in a healthy way, well, I know there's examples of the extreme of people who are all about themselves, but studies show that's only about 5% of all people. 95%, the rest of us, this is something that you really need to be able to understand the potential value you bring to a team, because there is only one of you. That's the one story. If you take this, that's the only thing you take away from this presentation. You need to keep that in mind. Remarkably, incredibly, to the Googleplex, unique, only one of you. What about the stories of the people around you? Some of the best ways to engage is to find out, ask for people's story. We've worked together for a while, but I don't know your story. If you've got 5 minutes, if you're willing to share, I'd like to hear what got you here. People love to share their stories. That's a great way to engage. How about my story? Have you shared that with others? Do others know your story? Like after you've asked for theirs, you say, see if they reciprocate. They say, well, I'd like to hear your story. Now you've engaged in a two-way street, two-way communication. Sharing stories is powerful. You'll find some commonalities you might not have been aware of when you share stories with one another. Our story, where you work, does it have a story? Every place does. What is it? How did it come to be? Or maybe, what's the story that brought you here? There's a story of a journey of every place. Even brand new facilities have a story. How did it come about? Where did you come from? Did it just pop up all of a sudden from nothing and it was an idea that now it's come to life? Story is a powerful way to engage people inside and outside your organization. Now we get to the empowerment part. Freedom reminds me of the Braveheart with Mel Gibson every time I see this slide. Okay, so let's talk about empowering. How do you empower the people around you? And again, leadership is the capacity to lead. This is not dependent upon the title that you have. So in swim lessons, I have a 4-year-old boy. I love taking him to the pool. Trust is a two-way street. As much as he needs to trust me that I'll catch him if he needs to be, I need to trust him to start practicing how to swim. Occasionally he's going to sink a little bit. I got to be able to trust him in that. It's a two-way street. So while he needs to trust me, I need to extend it to him. That's one of the best ways to empower people around you, is if they've proven they've got the ability to take something on and they're asking for it, they're eager for that, they've volunteered for that, give them something, extend trust to them. That's a great way to empower your team. Start with something simple, but give it to them. If they want to take ownership and initiative and they want to learn and they want to advance and grow, that's a great way to empower your team. Another way, and now this specific example comes from the hospitality industry. Ritz-Carlton is notoriously good at providing 5-star service at their hotels and resorts. Well, they have a standing rule that says any team member at any location, no matter what their title is, if an issue comes up, they can solve it on the spot, up to a value of $2,000. I know. You all are probably thinking $2,000. Gosh, I only have that in my wallet walking around like, yeah, fix it. $2,000. What's that? Listen to the principle though behind that standing rule. They have never, in the history of doing that, the hotel has never spent more than $500. Horst Schultz, the founder of Ritz-Carlton, said they never spent over $500. It was usually a bottle of wine, comping a meal, free night stay. It was never $2,000. What's important about that was that there was a standing rule that gave their team freedom to act, to take initiative when something came up, to make it right. Can you imagine if you're a janitor, if you're housekeeping, if you're front desk, if you're anybody on that team to be empowered that way? Now it makes everybody involved in that 5-star experience. And your facility can experience that same kind of freedom that empowers your team within the scope of compliance. I understand those requirements are there, but see if there are ways that you can have a standing, like whatever you could do in a way that has a memorable impact on guests. They've actually proven having structure and boundaries is needed. So you don't just want to be the wild, wild west and people can do whatever. The proof of that is when you put preschoolers, toddlers in a room with hundreds of toys, they can't enjoy themselves because there's too many options. On the other hand, if you put them in a room with a handful of toys, they will happily play for hours. Why? Because there's boundaries, there's structure, there's limitations. Limitations are a healthy thing. So I wanted to balance out the one I just said with balances. You need to balance it with boundaries and structure. That's an absolute necessity, because without it, then people have too many options and that can actually restrict freedom. There's this analysis paralysis that happens. Does your team know, without a shadow of a doubt, that the principles on the wall, the values that are on the slogans on the wall, on the posters plastered throughout your facility, do they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that those things are lived out? Do they? You're not going to be able to empower a team if that's not true. I've worked in organizations where slogans were great, but leadership, middle management, peers that I worked with, they weren't living out the values of the organization. And that has an impact on the team, a very negative one. You as a leader, no matter what your role or title is, you being someone that lives out those values means that at least you, and I hope there's way more in your facility, at least you are living out those values. That is an area of security, an area of confidence where people will feel empowered to do their very best because you are living out those values. And the last one is synergy. I love this word. Synergy is collective energy. When you've got so many things right within your organization, values are being lived out. There's freedom within structure. There's two-way trust extended. Oh, wow. When people work together, when we collaborate, synergy always trumps energy, always, because it's collective. It's collective. That kind of, oh, you can feel it in places. When you go in and the experience you have is unlike anywhere else. The synergy is just that powerful. It's huge. It's a game changer. This one has a lot of points on it, so I'm going to buzz through this because I want to make sure we have enough time on the back end of things. If we can understand, and this is one of the major premises of the book I'm working on right now about winning at life. If we could understand that failure is a part of life, what didn't work, we have to go through that, figure out what does. If kids riding a bike aren't dinged for it, if babies learning to walk aren't dinged for it, within a certain extent, we as adults shouldn't be either. We should be focusing on progress, not perfection. While perfection is the goal, and particularly in healthcare, we have got to strive for that because people's health and lives depend on it. Understand that there are things that are not life and death attached, that we're always seeking to make better. Progress should be the goal in those areas, not perfection. And learning the mistakes that come, that's not the opposite of success. The opposite of success is not failure, it's giving up. It's not caring. It's being apathetic. That's the opposite of success. Learning what didn't work, mistakes, failure, that's a part of the process of being successful, of winning at life, of doing a great job of what you do. Because the learning curve, it's just part of it. Everybody would admit you don't start off on day one with the same kind of experience and abilities and accomplishments as you do at day 365, let alone year 2, 4, 5, 10. It's a learning curve. And the social media has not done us any favors on this one. There is no such thing as overnight success. There just isn't. When you look at the profiles and study the biographies of all the people who are highly successful, they didn't start off that way. They weren't born billionaires. No, that was a process where they had to learn and fail and figure things out. And there's no such thing as overnight success. If your hospital, if your healthcare clinic, if your facility is experiencing fantastic reviews, That didn't happen accidentally or by luck or instantly. It was because of over time doing the right things with the right people and getting those processes fine-tuned, and it just got better and better and better. So there's no overnight success. Prepare your team to understand that this is a process, this is a journey, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But do you see continuous improvement as a blessing? Because I've been in organizations where continuous improvement was almost like a curse, like a burden, like, oh, I got to make things better. I love being in parts of teams and organizations, healthcare and business side of things, where they embrace continuous improvement, because there's a competitive advantage with that. If you go in with the understanding that things can always be better, how can we make things better? If that's the standing understanding, if that's the common understanding of your organization, things will keep getting better and you'll never settle. Good enough is the enemy of great, Jim Collins wrote very well. Don't settle for good enough. Always strive for greatness. And the best way to do that is to embrace the power of continuous improvement. How can we make this better? The most effective way to empower is recognition. It's hardwired into us. As a kid, we are looking for the recognition of our parents, of our peers. That doesn't change when we become adults. It is the number one thing. According to Career Builder, there was a study that showed that the top 3 reasons why team members stay or why they leave, 3 was compensation. Pay and benefits do matter. It's not number 1. Number 2 was work-life balance. Work-life balance. And then number one was recognition or the lack of it. You have a way to empower others so effectively, no matter what your role or title is, by recognizing them, giving them due credit for something that they came up with, for discovering things that they did that improved the patient experience or improved your processes internally, recognizing them for something they did or for how they do their work. The difference between recognition and flattery, flattery tries to make people feel better about themselves, but it's not really tied to anything concrete. It might be something they're wearing or you're a wonderful person, but that's not concrete. Recognition needs to be able to hang its hat on something. The more specific you are in your recognition, the more impact that it has. People that want the extra mile, recognize them for that. Are they on time? Can you depend on them? Oh, that is such an important thing to be recognized, and not all the time, or else it becomes kind of built into the landscape. It comes kind of expected. So I do something called random acts of encouragement, RAE. I put, you can't tell my team this, okay? So mum's the word. I put on my calendar reminders to do handwritten notes, and I put it on their monitors at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on how often it goes through the rotation. To them, it feels totally random. They have no idea that this is a calendar scheduled event, because it's so important for me to brighten their day and have them come into work with that note facing them, that I do it. A handwritten note on their monitor or on their desk or in their workspace. If they don't have a desk, you can still do it in a place where you know with their name, I wanted to recognize you for what you do, for how you contribute to this team. Those things are super impactful, and they make a huge difference because it rarely happens in the workplace. They've proven that if you monetize rewards, it can actually backfire. Now, this is probably not true of your organization, but typically organizations that pay for better performance, they get that. But that's all that they get. It's better to reward, if you can, with paid time off, with company swag. If they're great ambassadors for your hospital, your health clinic, your physician's office, have them wear stuff out in public. Give them something with your logo. They're a walking billboard. If they love where they work, give them something that helps them advertise when they're out and about. Give them little gift cards. There's some place that you know they like to eat or drink, or places they like to shop. And you can do money as well, but that should usually be a last resort, unless they've specifically contributed something that saved cost or increased revenue. Then it would be totally understandable to give them a little something of that. Absolutely. Retention is so important, internally especially, because you can't take care of the external patients if you're not taking great care of the internal patients. Focus on retention by truly having an open door. Can people come to you and get a listening ear? Not just a door is open, you can come in, sit down, vent, and then nothing happens. Is it an open door with ears? Are you helping by contributing new skills? Training and development is so important in this. Are you introducing them so that they can become new assets to the team? And do you see your role as being a coach, no matter what your title is? Do you like to coach and help others along in the process? Because an excellent coach does just that. Rather than managing, rather than a manager, a coach helps bring out the best in others. Do you see yourself as that? Because no matter what your role is, if you are coaching others, you're definitely leading others. Heroic success. Accelerated revenue is our consulting arm of the company. AR Billing Services is the healthcare arm of our company. And our goal at Accelerated Revenue is to elevate businesses to heroic success. And again, I went to the dictionary to find out, what is heroism? Well, it's really the pursuit of two ideals: a higher purpose and excellence. I don't know of any healthcare organizations that are like, just okay is good enough. It'll be okay. Average. Who needs to be excellent? Of course, they're striving for excellence. And the higher purpose is definitely there, because caring for others' health, I can't think of a higher purpose of others' lives and health than that. So our mission is to elevate business to heroic success. If you like to listen to podcasts, we have a weekly half-hour podcast called The Heroic Experience, and it's available on our YouTube channel, Accelerated Revenue. You can find it on podcast, Spotify, on Podbean, Amazon Music, on Google Podcasts. And we have a 30-minute show that's devoted to entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders on how they do business being heroic. Well, you can be the same. Well, I know it's been heard so much nowadays. Healthcare's are heroes. Healthcare providers are heroes. They can be. They can be. If they're pursuing and staying focused on those two ideals: 5-star excellence and a higher purpose beyond themselves. Absolutely, they can. And here's what we need to remember. And I've said this throughout because it's that important. Forget about titles. It would be more important to be a person of engaged leadership, empowering their team, having no title, than to have a title and not be engaging and empowering others. It's far more damaging to have a title and not be a person of positive impact and influence than it would be to not have a title and do it. You want to add value to others, and here's the way you should do it. Lead by example. Lead with effort. Do you love to learn? Education. Encouragement. Are you encouraging others? Go out of your way to do this on a regular basis. And are you striving for excellence? I guarantee that makes a difference no matter what your title is. So we have gotten to the end of our journey, and I buzzed through this. I will make this slide deck available. If anybody wants to have it, just email me. My email is coming up here on a slide. Just send me an email. I'll be happy to send it your way. Which is not true about me. Here we go. I am not 39 years old. I am actually 46. The other 4 are actually true of me and experiences that I had in life. Now, I will find out from Allie and Carolyn who was born farthest away from IRHA's headquarters, so I can send you these gifts. We'll make sure I get that drawing there. If your team would like free training, that's right, free, no cost training on this or any other of the 15 topics that I cover by virtual webinar. Empathy is one of the high demand, as is patient experience and engaged leadership, earning and keeping trust. There's a whole list of topics. Shoot me an email and I will send you the list of the topics I cover. All we ask for in exchange is for a 30-minute, no obligation discussion with your billing manager or your CFO or your revenue cycle director, so we can share with them who we are and what we do. There isn't anybody else in the country that does just what we do, a pure pre-collect, early out for self-pay. So in exchange for a conversation, no obligation, no strings attached, to one of those people, those decision makers on your self-pay billing, then we will be happy to schedule a webinar of your choice, training for your entire team, no cost, as a thank you for connecting us with that person in charge of that area. So Accelerated Revenue, that's our website for our consulting and keynote speaking and workshop facilitation arm. AR Billing Services, that's that self-pay early out expertise we've been doing over 20 years, and we are really good at it. You can learn all kinds of things at those websites about us and how we're different, how we're unique. What I want to thank you, though, is for your time and attention. it's the most valuable asset that we have is our time and our attention. So by you setting aside, or while you're munching, listening to me share with you, and if you're listening to the replay later, investing your time then, I want to thank you for that. That means a lot. Last note I want to leave you with. Leadership is the capacity to lead. The very best way, I was asked this in a workshop I gave yesterday. What's the best way? 2 ways. Always be learning and add a mentor or a coach into your life. Mentors are ones who are paying it forward or giving back because someone did to them. There's no money exchanged. They're giving of their time and of their abilities and of their experiences to help someone further that wants to learn, that wants to advance, that wants to grow. That's a mentor. A coach is someone that you pay to help progress personally and professionally. And I've had the opportunity to experience both as a coach and as someone being coached by someone else, as a mentee and as a mentor for others. And it's invaluable. Always be learning and add a mentor or a coach to your life. And remember, it has nothing to do with your title. It has everything to do with intentionally engaging and empowering the people around you so that you can be a hero in healthcare, no matter what your title, no matter what your role. Thanks for your time and attention today.
Thank you so much, John. And Sarah, if you're able to let us know where you were born or how far away you were born, I'll be able to get John the winner today. If not, I think I'm going to say Shantae may be our winner. So we'll have to see where Sarah was born. But we just really appreciate everybody's time. Really dense with information and good points there, John. So I'm glad that we recorded today, because this is definitely one I'm going to go back and look at again for my own use. So looks like Sarah was born in Terre Haute, and I'm pretty sure Tina was born in Terre Haute. And I know that I was only born just down the road. So Shantae, you are the winner if you were born in Louisville. So if you want to send John your address so he can send you those books, he did share his email there. It looks like Shantae is excited. And I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong as well, but just really appreciate everybody's time today. I didn't see any questions come through, though we may be reaching out to you, John, to see if we might be able to get you signed up for a couple other lunch and learns possibly in the future. A lot of good content, like I said today, and I'd love to hear some of your other presentations.
I love to do it. I've gotten to virtually exhibit and have people in front of me literally on every continent except Antarctica. I don't think I'll ever get the chance to do that because I can do it in a virtual format. So I've had the privilege of adding value to people literally around the world. I'm so grateful for platforms like this, because I'm old enough to remember when this thing was like science fiction. Now we get to do it. So I would be happy to do that. I love to do lunch and learn webinars.
Yes, as a Star Wars fan, I would say you probably certainly appreciate that Zoom and its ilk are now real life technology we're getting to play with. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, presentation will be up on our YouTube channel by the end of the week. And we've just really appreciated everybody's time today. So have a good one.